LGBTQ. But fortunately, the immigration courts, if the argument is well presented, tend to understand that. The lawyer has to argue it.
Yes. Yes,
If you don't argue it, it's gone. Yes, the lawyer has to understand that and present the argument, often with the help of a psychiatrist who's worked with the client, maybe written a declaration or an affidavit. Well, definitely written a declaration or an affidavit attesting to why this person wouldn't want to talk about the issue and discussing what sort of post-traumatic stress disorder that client might be suffering from all that he or she has experienced in the home country.
And you mentioned the gentleman from Honduras. I mean, that was from the parent. I mean, is that enough, or you need government involvement?
With that client, there was governmental involvement. With just a parent, it might be harder because then it's perceived as abuse, maybe instead of persecution. It might be viewed that you could resettle, you could leave the parent's home. But because Honduran society is so cruel to that population, and because police beat persons from that population, there is governmental involvement, not by virtue of a criminal statute, but just that's their behavior. That's the behavior of the police.
It's like a cultural norm of intolerance.
Exactly. So that client, for example, frequented a park where he just spent time with his gay friends. And the police would come to the park. And if you didn't get away quickly enough, they would simply beat you, maybe temporarily arrest you, then let you go because there were no real charges against you. So yeah, it's societal, and the police participate in it. So there were a lot of things he went through. The most horrific treatment was at the hands of his father, because his father wanted to make him a man. That's how his father explained it.
I think we were talking too with women, with lesbians, they could be put in a forced marriage.
Yes, I had a Cameroonian client, and in Cameroon, it's punishable by 5 years imprisonment to be gay. The statute states that you have to engage in rapport sexuel, or sexual relations with somebody of the same sex. But what happens on the ground is that if you're seen holding hands with somebody, or you're reputed to be gay, or you send an affectionate text message to the wrong person, you're turned in and can spend years imprisoned. And
which is not nice in those countries, to say the least.
Especially if you're gay. Especially if you're gay. You are mistreated for being gay. I don't even want to talk about it, the things that happen in prison. And sometimes the police simply murder you, as do mobs on the street. But yes, for women, there is the issue of forced marriage because the families aren't accepting. So there's the problem that you're forced into a marriage that's unwanted, and then it's tantamount to rape because you have no interest in this human being as an object of your love. So that's a common one, as is rape. To sort of
change you. It's their idea of conversion therapy, I suppose.
It is. So. Yeah, it's called corrective rape, actually.
I didn't hear that. Wow.
Yeah, corrective rape.
My goodness, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it literally just sent a shiver up my spine to think that there actually could be such a term.
Yeah.
Which is pretty horrific. And the last area you worked in deals with folks who have been convicted of a crime or something? Or?
Yes, so in court, I also consult with criminal attorneys so that clients aren't convicted of deportable offenses, explaining how serious it is to plead out to something that is very minor. Mm-hmm. But it can have dramatic effects to things that aren't even considered crimes under the criminal system.
Our criminal system?
Under the criminal system, they're not considered convictions. But under the immigration law definition, where there's some finding or admission of guilt, and then there's a restraint on liberty, that's a conviction under immigration law. So for example, a youth that's put in a diversion program, that might not be a conviction. But if it's a deferred decision, so we think that you're guilty if you complete, these couple years of probation, this will be erased. You'll have nothing criminal on your record.
Oh, continued without a finding kind of thing.
Continue without a finding in Massachusetts, yes. Yeah. In Massachusetts, that's what it's termed. It's termed different things in other states, but it's essentially that. You admit to sufficient facts, you're put on probation, you successfully completed, it's not a conviction.
Okay.
But under immigration law, it is. And for obvious reasons, criminal attorneys don't understand that a quaff, continuance without a finding,
can have very serious effects.
Can result in your permanent banishment from the United States.
Which in the case of an LGBTQ person can be a death sentence almost in certain countries.
Right, so then you apply for, it might be withholding removal, depending on what the crime was, or it might have to be Convention Against Torture Relief, which is extremely hard to win.
I assume Convention Against Torture Relief, is that a U.S. statute or is that a treaty? It sounds like a treaty.
It's a treaty that was implemented in our immigration regulations.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so that...
So obviously we handle it in our own way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
create our own standards.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if somebody's has a continuance without a finding, immigration sees that as grounds for removal, but removal could have extraordinarily serious consequences for this individual.
Right.
So somebody like you would get involved and try to keep them in the country.
Explain to the criminal attorneys what the consequences are. And sometimes when the prosecutor finds out what the consequences are, they're willing to have the client to plead to something else because they don't think it's an offense that should lead to deportation. For example, if it happens more often than people might think that if you have 3 baggies of marijuana, you're charged with possession with intent to distribute.
Yeah.
And if you have that conviction, you can't apply for anything except Convention Against Torture Relief.
Wow.
Yeah. So if the prosecutor is willing to acknowledge, hey, 3 baggies doesn't necessarily amount to an intent to distribute. It might just be 3 baggies.
So if the prosecuting attorney, because they have prosecutorial discretion,
Yes.
if they're aware of the fact of, this person's deported.
This person will be permanently banished
Yeah.
for 3 baggies of marijuana, and unless the government acquiesces in treatment that rises to the level of the legal definition of torture, you're going to have to go. Yeah.
That sounds very hard, especially when the definition of torture seems to get changed in this country, depending on during the political season anyway. It seems different people have different takes on what constitutes torture.
And not only that, it has to be proven. So if you have a busy lawyer who hasn't done a lot of Convention Against Torture cases, there's a pretty good chance. Or if you're poor and you can't afford to pay an expert to do an affidavit explaining what happens in the country of origin, you might be out of luck even though factually you should be able to win the relief. You might just be out of luck because it requires careful documentation, which requires a lot of lawyer hours.
Which is why I'm thankful we have people like you who do this pro bono or low bono, which is good.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
So I understand also, we're wrapping up here, but I did want to mention you have a blog on Huntington Post.
Huffington.
What did I say? Huffington Post, yes. So if somebody wanted to view your blog, they would just type your name in?
Yes, and most easily they would do Laura Murray-Tjan, Huffington Post. And then it just all appears.
Okay, and do you have like a website for your?
I have my Federal Immigration Appeals Project website has all my blogs on it, and also other articles that I've written and
That's
media appearances.
www.fiaboston.com?
FIAP Boston.
FIAP, I can see that far. But it is up on the screen for our
It
viewers.
is up on the screen, and yes, that is the phone number.
Awesome.
If you go in the news section, it has all of my Huffington Post blogs and,
Awesome.
like I said, other things that I've written or other media appearances, as well as information about cases without clients' names, obviously.
Because immigration is one of those areas of law, I think, that comes up a lot, and people just don't know enough about it.
Or they just don't realize how crazy complicated it is.
Yes.
And how many mistakes are made, which is the tragedy.
Well, tragic for many clients, I'm sure.
Yes.
So, but thank you so much for being on the show. I really
Thank you for
appreciate
having
it.
me.
And to the viewers, thank you for tuning in to Legal Lines. Legal Lines is brought to you the third Wednesday of every month. My name is Tim Lynch. I'm your host of Legal Lines. Thank you, and have a good day. It was great.